Normally we have to shout over the conversations to get the session started. So good morning, everybody. Good morning online as well. This is a hybrid session. My name is Tom Williams, and I'm with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So this session, this is one of the seminars of the World Water Week. Maybe you're becoming familiar now with the format of the World Water Week in the different sessions. If you're interested to submit an abstract for next year, this is where your abstract, if it's approved, finally ends up in one of these seminars. Seminars are normally a mix of abstracts and invited speakers. And our theme of our seminar, which has 3 sessions, is Achieving 2030 Food Nutrition Targets Through Water Security. So this is the second of 3 sessions. We had one session online last week. We'll have the 3rd session immediately after this session today. So we're looking at this water nexus, and many of you will be aware that last year was the Food Systems Summit. In March next year, we've got the UN Water Conference. So this discussion we're having today nicely sits between these 2 sort of very important UN-led summits on food and water. Now, from my particular perspective, I don't think water really showed up at the Food Systems Summit as it ought to. We all know how much water use is attributed to food production. We heard in our first session from FAO that the demand for food and fiber by 2050 compared to 2012 is going to go up by about 50%. And even if we transition to a healthy, sustainable diet, the Eat Lancet report from 2019, if you read through, I don't know, it's the 30, 40 pages of that report, it states that for a healthy, sustainable diet, as advocated by the Eat Lancet, will require additional consumptive water use for the agricultural sector. So even if we transition to a healthy diet, we're actually going to be increasing consumptive water use. So if we think that we're in a really tight pinch now, as it relates to water use for food and agriculture, I think we're going to get even tighter as we progress, as demand grows and as shifting diets change over the years ahead. And I think what the UN Water Conference and the Food Systems Summit have in common is that they're both taking a multi-stakeholder approach in terms of participation, which I think is the new way that we have to be working together. I think the old conventional way of governments taking the lead has proved to be ineffective. We need a multi-stakeholder inclusive approach to the food systems and to water systems. So today in our agenda, I think we will reflect that multi-stakeholderism. We've got speakers from the private sector, from SMEs, from NGOs, and from government. So I think we're really embracing that multi-stakeholder approach. Our session today includes 6 speakers, and we're going to divide that into two separate sort of sections. We'll have 3 speakers, each having 10-minute presentations. We'll then pause after the first 3, take some Q&A from the audience and our friends online. We'll then move into the final 3 presentations, and again, we'll have about 10 or so minutes to have some questions and answers with those 3 speakers. And just to give you a preview of who's coming up in terms of our speakers, you'll see names and affiliations on the screen. Do encourage you to use your app on your phone to find out more about these individuals and see where else they are presenting this week, because I'm sure you're going to be enticed by what they're going to say and want to connect with them later on as the week as it progresses. But without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker to come to the floor. And our first speaker is Dr. Tanja Rodiger-Verwerke, who is the Deputy Director General for Global Health, Resilience, Equality of Opportunity with the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, the government of Germany. So Dr. Rodiger-Verwerke, please, the floor is yours, and you're all mic'd up, aren't you?
Yeah. So thank you, Tom, and good morning, everybody. Representative of the very unaffected governments. So good morning to all. I hope you do better than we in the governments. Thank you, Tom, for giving me the word, and it's a great pleasure to be back again in Stockholm to the Water Week. I love it to be here, and I love to be in the sites. I hope you join in that this is a wonderful place to have a conference. And it's an equal great pleasure to do so on behalf of the impressive group of co-conveners, namely Jamie Brown. So I have to fix the persons in the room, and the co-conveners are AGRA, FAO, and We4F, and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So the role of development cooperation to achieve the food and nutrition security through water security, this is what we want to talk in the next minutes. This seminar and this session, especially on achieving food and nutrition targets by 2030 through water security, by strengthening the cross-sectoral and private sector partnerships, are more relevant than ever. And the ones who have been in several water weeks here know that we, together with others, are working on this nexus for many, many years. We have piloted in many countries. So having said that, in 2022, achieving to the UN up to 323 million people globally will become actually food insecure and are on high risk. We read this every day in the newspaper, especially about Somalia in these days. So increasing weather and climate extreme events, as well as degradation of ecosystems and biodiversity loss, exposes millions of people to reduced water security, and in addition, the intertwining with other global crises, such as COVID-19 pandemic, economic uncertainty, and the increasing number of conflicts, have significantly worsened the situation for the poorest. Especially Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has dramatically accelerated insecurity worldwide. So within half a year, everything became worse than we thought last year. The global hotspots of high vulnerability are found particularly in Africa, South Asia, Central and South America, and especially marginalized and vulnerable groups as indigenous people, small-scale food producers, and low-income households with children, elderly people, and pregnant women are risk of food and water insecurity. In the Horn of Africa, we see the consequences of global crisis and droughts amplify food and water insecurity. Over 18 million people in Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya are at risk of severe hunger. It is one of the worst droughts we have seen in history. And in Somalia, it's up to 40, 50% of the population are concrete at risk of starvation. Life without water, life without hunger and poverty is only possible if we think water, food, and energy together in a nexus. For this, we need strong partnership, as Tom already said in the beginning, with all development actors, but I would say even more, we need strong partnerships with the private sector, because this is the transformation scheme we need. So thus I'm very pleased to be part of this event to jointly advance the global agenda towards resilient agri-food as well as water resource systems. In the coming minutes, I'm pleased to share with you promising development cooperation approaches to build cross-sectoral partnerships, especially with the private sector. So we need to ask, how can cross-sectoral coordination and decision-making successfully be integrated in policy and action for food and water security? What does it imply to build a global capacity to act? The key to food and water security is, from our perspective, the dialogue between all stakeholders. And we need to break down established silo structures and create bridges among sectors. And probably some of you know that at the World Bank, our minister, together with others, established a new alliance for food security. The starting point was the aggression against Ukraine, and we wanted to coordinate, with the help of the World Bank, the support structures of the governments and together with the private sector. This is ongoing and is speeding up. And in this, the water, energy, food nexus approach can provide tools which are proven and methods to build these capacities and networks. So what is the BMZ approach and the role of development cooperation in this big picture? The water, energy, food nexus approach was initiated by the BMZ already in 2011. And since then, it has proven to be a strong approach to align actions and stakeholders at various levels. This approach plays a key role in the efforts of the BMZ Special Initiative, A World Without Hunger. This is one of our politics specialized groups, and a huge part of our budget goes in the initiative A World Without Hunger. And the Global Alliance for Food Security, announced by the G7 countries and the World Bank in Elmo this summer, recently this summer, to achieve the SDG 2 and 6. Since now, our special initiative, which is the abbreviation SIWI, has succeeded in developing tailored and innovative instruments, from the format of the Green Innovation Centers to the establishment of new multilateral initiatives as the Water Energy for Food. Water Energy for Food has announced at the Stockholm Water Week 2018 and is a joint international initiative between the BMZ, the EU, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Government of Netherlands, Sweden through SIDA, and USAID. The Water and Energy for Food aims to, firstly, increase food production sustainably along the food value chain, secondly, promote climate and environmental resilience and biodiversity, thirdly, increase income for the base of the pyramid in both rural and urban areas, and fourth, enhancing multi-sectoral partnerships to boost the water, energy, food nexus solutions of local innovators and SME. So you see, this is a broad package, and we have been piloting together with our partners several projects in several countries. But what is the question? But why do partnerships with the global and local private sector make a difference? Let me try to give an answer. You might have others. The agriculture and food sector is the biggest private sector in the world. And in this context, an increased collaboration and joint mobilization of resources together with the private sector naturally can boost the development of sustainable solutions. And to give you a concrete example, the CERES 2030 study by CEF, the Center of CEF is a part of University in Bonn, published in 2020, indicated that the promotion of small-scale irrigation has the potential to lift more than 140 million people out of hunger and poverty with a relatively low investment. The investment costs are low because currently local SMEs are the driver for scaling farmer-led irrigation in Africa. They act as innovators, distributors, advisors, service providers, and sometimes even as finance institutions, providing access to finance to smallholders. And scaling up these small-scale irrigation systems connects climate change adaptation and management of water resources, and thus impacts food and water security. So thus we need to strengthen the partnerships between the private and the public sector, first to develop a market-based approach and pathway to democratize access to innovation, inputs and finance for small-scale food producers, and second, to develop and support the on-farm water management, as well as integrated watershed management and irrigation scheme development. So following these two pathways can benefit low-income households and climate-sensitive livelihoods and lead at the same time to job creation, especially for women and youth. So what can we learn from these examples from the initiative Water Energy for Food? I think let's try to summarize. I think we can learn a cross-sectoral nexus approach combines global agenda setting with local action. A joint effort to scale global capacities means unified action and to mobilize resources. Climate, energy, and water smart innovation are key for the transformation and life without hunger, and a strong team play between governments, international organizations, research institutions, civil society, as well as the global and local private sector is needed to address the multidimensional intertwined crisis and to achieve the SDGs. On behalf of the BMZ, the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and of the co-conveners of this session, I want you to invite to partner for global, regional, and local harmonized actions to achieve the SDGs on food and water security. So we need this team spirit among all stakeholders. I'm looking forward to the next speakers and for the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rodiger Verwerker, and thank you for your articulation of that cross-sectoral, multi-stakeholder approach, which was much more elegant than I put it earlier on. So thank you for that. And you'll hear more about the Water and Energy for Food initiative that you heard about later on in our session today. So let's move on to our second speaker, who is Mrs. Rhoda Nuvunga. But to introduce Rhoda, I'd like to introduce first Sashaku Oshima, who is the Deputy Director of Land and Water at the FAO. Sasha, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you for that inspiring opening remark. I'm Sasha Kuoshima from FAO's Land and Water Division. It's a pleasure for me to introduce some of the work, that seminal work that we're doing in this particular interconnection between water, energy, food nexus, but looking at nutrition. And some of the remarks that you have made, Dr. Tanya, are really key in what we're trying to tackle at the local levels. Hence, we have brought a great speaker, Dr. Rhoda Nuvunga from the Ministry of Science and Innovation, but she is the director of Water Institute. But before I give the floor to our seminal speaker on the focused area of our work, we've been touching on water productivity, which is very much related to bringing on-farm scale and looking at efficient water production. So we're trying to get more value per crop that includes nutrition density. And so hence this project that is co-funded with IFA, the International Fund for Agriculture Development, aims to elucidate how do we do this from very sophisticated projects that we have with SIWI on nutrition and water sensitivity in terms of matching water productivity, the innovation part in looking at remote sensed information on biomass. So we're not measuring water just from the tap, but looking at the biomass, the climate, what is efficient for that crop, but matching with irrelevance of nutritional quality that will address the population. So, so this is getting it on the ground from very sophisticated models to the farmer field schools and the training, the capacity building needed to make the step forward in adoption by the farmers in dealing with climate, nutrition, and also potentially drought and all the water scarcity that we have been hearing is really difficult and challenging. So with that, I would just like to leave the floor, leave the thoughts to you with the introduction of the project from Mozambique. So I welcome Dr. Navunda to the floor and make your seminal presentation.
I think my macro is on. Use this. I don't need a mic. Thank you very much, Sasha, and good morning, everyone. As Sasha introduced myself, I'm Rhoda Nuvunga Luis from Mozambique. I work at the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Higher Education, and the Water Research Institute. It's an institute under this ministry. I'm going to share with you what we are doing in Mozambique in partnership with the FAO and IFAD. And my presentation title today is Advancing Water, Food and Nutrition Security through Multiple-Use Water System for Small-Scale Farmers. You do it for me? Thank you. So this is my outline presentation. I will introduce a little bit my country, the water resource, the irrigation and water productivity, the main constraints that we are having, and the policy from the government to cope with those constraints, and some examples we are doing in fields. So Mozambique, it's quite a huge country. It's almost 800,000 square kilometers, and it has a very long coastline. It's almost 3,000 square kilometers of shoreline on the Indian Ocean. The country has a potential in agriculture. It's estimated that 62% of the total land area it's not cultivated. We just have 7% of land which is currently cultivated. Also, it's important to make a reference that our agriculture, it's mainly rain-fed. We don't have that very sophisticated structure in irrigation. And it's also important to mention that roughly 72% of farmers in the country, they work in a small land, not more than 2 hectares. In terms of water resource, if you look to the numbers, you see that 104 main-based rivers, it's huge water in the country. But this is not true. We have just 4 areas between 1,000 and 10,000 square kilometers, which from the half of this 104 basins. And our main basin is Zambezi River. I can show you from here where we have the Kabora Bassa Dam, one of the major dams in Africa. And in the north, which makes a border with Tanzania, we have Rovuma River. The climate, it's also a challenge for us. We do have too much water in the center and north and less water in south. The south region, it's really very dry. And the north region, we have floods, and cyclically we have cyclones and storms. Irrigation and water productivity, which is our main focus on that section. We have a wet season from October to March, whereas the rainfall level varies too much, between 6 to 8% of annual precipitation. And it's being from over 1,000 millimeters in the center, where we're north and center, where we have water, enough water, let's say, and while in south, it's less than 500 millimeters. I would like to stress here, in relation to irrigation water productivity, what government is doing now. So the government ambition is to increase the water productivity at least 3 times compared to rain-fed system for food crops. And I mentioned in the previous slides that south it's okay, but north it's okay, but south it's very dry. So to increase the productivity, we need at least to increase 3 times compared with rain-fed system for food crops. Under these conditions, the water demand for irrigation is currently estimated at around 600 million cubic meters per year. Assuming that irrigation water use efficiency will increase by 30% over the next 10 years, the government ambition is also to have the projected irrigation water demand in the medium term estimated to be close to 1,000 million cubic meter per year. So the main constraints related to water, food, and crop production. The first one I will mention is climate. We are facing really constraints in the center and north of Mozambique due to climate change. Mozambique is a country with seasonal climate hazards. The last one, I think everyone heard about that, was Idai. We had Idai, which affected 4 provinces, all 4 provinces in the center of the country. This is Manica, Zambezia, Tete, and Manica, all of them. So all the central region of the country was affected by Idai. It was really very bad situation. This figure shows you one of the districts in Sofala, and we still have water in some areas since that time. And another big constraint for Mozambique was from 2020, let's say up now, we have that COVID pandemic. It forced the country to close its border and declare the state of emergency in April 2020. So we're still up now, step by step, literally releasing all those very restrictive measures. But in my country, it's not normal to see all of you sitting like you are sitting and without masks. And even wearing masks, we have to live 1 seat per each other. We're still not open country because of COVID. I would also like to share with you what the government is doing to cope with all this food insecurity and nutrition. So Mozambique investments and development strategy are defined within 2 main documents. One is 5-year plan government, and another one is annual strategic plan. And those documents outline the main areas of intervention for the government, including social and economic policies measures. The government of Mozambique is promoting policies that ensure food security and nutrition. Therefore, we have the strategy for food security and nutrition. It's the second phase. We had a first phase. This is the second phase, and was approved while merging with the SDGs. For our case, particularly the SDG 6. Similarly, the multi-sectoral action plan for reduction of chronic malnutrition in Mozambique, this was approved for 5-year plan, and now it's prorogued from 2020, involving 12 ministers, and the important one I can mention: the health minister, agriculture, finance, education, public building and housing, women and social action, industry, business and planning, and another ministry that's are part of this multi-sectoral action plan. Here, I would like to share what we're doing with FAO and IFAD efforts to cope with climate change, agriculture, and food insecurity and nutrition to reach the SDG 2 and 6. My institution, because it's Water Research Institute, support much more the SDG 6, but we also work with the FAO for food nutrition and food security, because water is across issue between food production and wash. So nutrition in this pillar, I would like to share what we are doing in south of Mozambique in Inhambane, district of Vilanculos, within the nutrition sensitive water productive project. This one is funded by IFAD. And what we did at the beginning, a part of doing capacity building with small farmers, we are also using the database, the data available from FAO, IFT, and the other partners to collect a baseline data with the farmers to know, in fact, what are their needs to improve crops productivity and specific crop, which we call the smart crops, to really support their food insecurity. So we introduce this nutrition sensitive water productivity project principles that can lead to the adoption of sustainable water management and agronomic practice to produce those smart crops with high nutrient content and value. So this project, this one I'm showing here, it's based in Inhambane and in north of Mozambique. I didn't bring the figures of north of Mozambique. This is Inhambane, and this is one of the technicians who is collecting the data with a rural community. It's okay, I'm nearly there. So this is the data to see how we improved using those technologies and using the synergy between FAO, IFAD, and IFAD is also supporting the ProCava project, which is basically the cassava food chain project. You can jump this one. Yeah, you stay with this. And here it's the last slide I want to share with you. I'm showing you the FAZIMO project. This is a partnership with FAO, other Mozambican institution, and this is funded by the Canadian government, IDRC, and the Upson Valley project. It's funded by the Netherlands, and you can see how we can use drones technology and other technologies to collect data, to bring data, and to make those data available on the field, so water productivity and crop productivity can be improved using those technologies. I think by sharing it, I will finish here and I will wait for the questions. Thank you very much to listen to me.
Thank you, Dr. Navunga, and sorry for having to hurry you up there. We have 6 speakers that we have to get through, but you will come back and we will have some questions for you and you will be around and people can network with you. But super impressive to see was that 12 ministries, that intra-ministerial collaboration is super impressive that you shared with us. Now, we're going to move to an online presentation now. We're going to have Tilahan Amida, who is head Resilience, Climate and Soil Fertility at AGRA, which is the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. So all being well, I think we should be ready to go for Tulahan. We should see you on our screen, hopefully.
Yeah, can you remove the presentations from your side, please? Have you removed it? Can you see my presentations? Can you confirm, please? I cannot hear anything. Can you confirm, please? I cannot hear anything. I cannot hear anything. I was hearing you when you were talking, but now I don't hear anything.
Can you hear us now? Stockholm.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Sorry for the disruptions. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. The title I'm going to talk about is really approaching food and nutrition security through sustainable farming. That is really where AGRA and our partners are going. My name is Tilahun, working for AGRA as a head of Resilience, Climate and Soils Program. AGRA is a continental institution, Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, which has been working for the last 15 years to transform African farmers, and in close collaboration with many of you, many donors. And our vision is to contribute to inclusive agriculture transformation, reduce hunger, poverty, but also improve the environment. And we support farmers and their institutions to develop, build human capital and the growth. But also we work a lot with private sector to make the system market fit. So we work a lot with SMEs, we work a lot with extension, and we also work a lot with governments to develop state capability. And our approach is about really creating capacity of the system enablers, but also making sure that we work with countries on a country portfolio that considers the unique needs of each country. Africa, as you know, is very diverse. It's a big continent with diverse farming systems and needs. So our approaches are context specific, but also we make sure that we bring in technologies, practices tailored to that context from the global knowledge, including the CGR system, research institutions from the respective countries. And we collaborate closely with partners and leveraging the investment, leveraging the capability and the resources of partners. I hope I'm still audible, yeah? So, in fact, Africa, as it was mentioned by the previous speaker, Dr. Tanya, we are, climate change is not the future. We are already facing it in the continent. And a lot has changed in the last 20, 30 years, particularly in Eastern Africa. And it's expressed through recurrent drought, and untimely rain, floods, extreme events. And we are very keen about, as I said at the beginning, bringing in context-specific resilience strategies, but also productivity strategies. This is the African continent with about 13 distinct farming systems that we worked on. I personally worked on with colleagues from Queensland University, and we have about 13 distinct farming systems in the continent. And these variable farming systems need a different and variable content. And we in Agra are operating at least 4 of them. And if you take Ethiopia alone, there are distinct farming systems. You know, some are high rainfall, good soils, others are high rainfall, you know, acidic soils, others are very dry livestock-based systems, and a mix of it all in between. So targeting is becoming a big issue when it comes to responding to climate change adaptation. And what we do, of course, is, you know, really using the global knowledge to map, you know, where is that variability happening in the short range, in the long range, and what do we need to do, you know, to respond to these emerging challenges. Now, the rural poverty, you know, also is hugely linked to land degradation, source fertility decline. You know, on the continent, we keep saying we have a lot of land. We keep opening new land. We get in the first few years high yields with low input. Then it comes to nutrient depletion, yield reduction, income reduction, and ending up in poverty trap. So how do we reverse this trend and making sure that we bring in, you know, interventions before the system is really declined to that level? So one is really making sure that our nutrients that are removed by the farm, by the system, by the yield, are replaced through different sources, organic resources, fertilizers, but also good management options. And when insufficient nutrients are there, of course, that leads you to a downward spiral to poverty line. And if you see the global trend and African trend, you know, we are going to feed, you know, many more millions in the coming years. And this is the work done by McKinsey, showing that to feed our population by 2050 in the continent, most of the production and yield has to come from intensification, from sustainable intensification, which means producing more per unit of land. Other things like land expansion potential, you know, are in very few countries. Other things where we can save is like post-harvest losses and management practices, but really sustainable intensification, producing more, so that we are not encroaching the forests, we are not encroaching the wetlands. So farming is remaining where it is now, but the trend is alarming. So we in Agra, you know, in close collaboration with, you know, partners, after realizing that, you know, input itself is important, but is not good enough. And we are challenged by multiple risks and the population boom, which we need to feed. So we are developing a strategy called sustainable farming. And the sustainable farming is bringing knowledge from regenerative agriculture, from, you know, agroecology concepts, from sustainable intensification concepts, but mainstream to the needs of Africa. What it means is our farming should satisfy 3 needs. It should satisfy productivity, you know, food needs. It should address the environmental concerns, and it should be profitable to our you know, communities. And these are really very, you know, important, but sometimes competing priorities. So what we are trying to bring in is like, you know, ensuring that we work in a semicircular or circular system, a lot of, you know, a lot of reuse, recycling of nutrients and water, restoring our landscapes, regreening them, and capturing carbon to address climate change. But also what Dr. Tanya has said, you know, the nexus of water, food, and energy, particularly because, you know, most of African landscapes are degraded because of lack of energy, you know, for cooking. People are cutting trees, are deforesting even protected areas to, you know, get access to energy. Unless we address this household energy demand, we cannot talk about really sustainability. And that is really a very, very important concept that was introduced by BMZ. But also, you know, we are saying agriculture in Africa, and we are called sub-Saharan Africa because of really unreliable water resource, drought. So how do we make sure that we map, we store, and we efficiently utilize rainwater, but also spring and surface water? We are keen about and trying to employ climate smart agriculture interventions, coming from drought resistant, climate resistant varieties or management practices, but all that by making it inclusive, addressing the concerns of women, addressing also the issues of soil health, including in our case judicious use of fertilizers, because our systems are so depleted that whatever you do, unless you add a bit of it, and Africa is currently applying about 18 kg per hectare, compared to at least 150 kg, the minimum in Northern Europe, and probably 3 times more in Asia, particularly in China. So what we have is really a degraded system that needs a bit of input. And all that, of course, cannot happen unless we really reach farmers with integrated solutions, which is what we call in Agra last mile delivery, particularly improving the extension system. I'll talk about it in all that. So these things are not coming from the blue. We have a lot of knowledge. There are so many practices in the continent, tested in the continent. These are all sorts of different water management, which we can really capitalize on and test it in various parts of Africa with small-scale farmers. We also have been, it has been also mentioned, experiencing a very fast recovery of land through integrated watershed management in a very short period of time. This is the work, for example, in Ethiopian highlands, where by bringing in integrated solutions, the whole landscape could be reversed in 6 years. And I'll show you the impact of this. But also we are bringing in more regenerative, practices like this experience we have in Kenya, particularly for high value oriented farmers. They are investing on it, conservation agriculture, recycling of nutrients, bringing in, water harvesting ponds, like SIWI pits and structures. All that is a very important component of water management. And this is a work done by GIZ. I used to work with GIZ when I was with Ecosat, and this is a work that we have done in northern Ethiopia, eastern Ethiopia, where degraded land, hugely degraded. We used physical barriers, what you call water spreading weirs, to slow down the flood, convert it to rangelands, recover the nutrient, recover the water, and you could see huge, patches of land coming back in 3 years' time. And this is doable, and that we have published a lot on this. But also the impact of this landscape, recovery is very much pronounced in terms of food security. I'll show you, for example, in Ethiopia, on these watersheds, when we compared intervention groups working with us in the landscape versus in other landscapes, food security was assured like in 5 years' time. You could see the intervention areas, the households are really rarely getting food shortage. And if they get, it's like less than 10% of them. While in non-intervention areas, up to 50% of the people are exposed for food security for at least 5 months of the year. So it's not about only environment, it's about also food security and the resilience. And we really are aware of in Agra, about risks. And the risks are multiple for African farmers. We have risks related to climate change. We have risks related to market fluctuations. We have risks, related to pests, outbreaks, like locusts, for example, in South Africa. But we have risks related to conflicts, local conflicts, political instability, but also conflicts elsewhere affecting our farmers and getting access to inputs. So we are really, trying to work together along with our partners to along this, while we minimize risks, we improve productivity, improve profitability, and we reach farmers at a scale by enhancing the capacity of governments, particularly the extension system. If we don't do that, of course, you will see all the risks and the vulnerability getting worse in the continent. And this is my last slide, Chair. So what we are really trying to do is, we advocate for a last mile delivery, context-specific last mile delivery system for sustainable farming. So really bringing in knowledge from the research system, from input companies, from seed companies, from the public sector, fine-tuning it, tweaking it to fit to Africa. For example, in the extension system where we have very high ratio of farmer to extension. In some places, one extension is expected to serve 5,000 farmers, which is almost unrealistic, And in countries like Mozambique that my sister has presented, I used to work there as a representative of ECRISAT in Mozambique. And that was a major issue. And now what we have brought in is like a village-based advisor. These are farmers within the village who are either university dropouts, who are, retirees, who are young people who didn't have a job. Train them to make business out of agriculture. At the same time, they bring in agricultural innovations into the system. And of course, bringing in the market opportunities through agro dealers and all that, as aggregators, as connectors, all that serving farmers and systems. So, and of course, all this could be accompanied by, digital agriculture, targeting with using mobile phones, but also using, the image processing to target and use advanced analytics for our extensionists. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you heard me. Back to you, Chair.
Really appreciate that. And they're really bringing that water, food, energy nexus to life with those examples in Africa, and particularly like your focus on soil health. Now, often we overly focus, I think, when we talk of soil health on carbon sequestration, but we really need to make sure that we look at the multiple needs and co-benefits of soil health, carbon sequestration, water management, delivering nutritious food, and also helping farmers' livelihoods. We need to sort of claw back a little bit of time, so we're going to shift the Q&A to the very end when we can have all of our speakers up here and have some questions and answers. So we won't have the Q&A specifically for the last three speakers. We'll bring them up towards the end. So we're going to continue on with our speakers, and I'd like to Mike Nemeth, who is Senior Advisor, Agriculture and Environmental Sustainability for Nutrien. So Mike, please take the floor. You mic'd up.
Thanks, Tom. Wonderful, and thank you. I'm grateful to be here today. So I'm just going to give a perspective on how the private sector can advance some solutions and opportunities to accelerate food and water security goals. So just a little bit about Nutrien. We are the world's largest integrated agricultural company. So we have 4 interrelated business units. We have our potash, phosphate, and nitrogen production and distribution networks, where we distribute fertilizer globally. And then we have the world's largest integrated ag retailer. So as an ag retailer, we work directly with over 500,000 farmers across the world, primarily in North America, South America, and Australia. And we work directly with them, not just providing inputs such as crop nutrients and crop protection products and seeds, but also agronomic advice and expertise to make sure that they're getting the solutions that they need to be able to make farms profitable and resilient. So we all know that water issues are complex, and water management is complex. Why? Because it often involves multifaceted challenges and conflicting and sometimes challenging opportunities or challenges in watersheds. But we also know that as the world looks to address the climate challenge, that we can't address water in the same way, because water has to be done locally. It has to consider the local context of the watershed that it's in order to work, and we saw examples of that in the last presentation. So when I think about water management, I like to think about water stewardship. And the graphic on the right is really a good example for me and an illustration of the difference between water management and water stewardship. Water management is really focused on a site, and that site could be a farm, it could be a processing facility, it could even be a city. There are specific management needs and requirements for that site. But water stewardship requires that site or organization to look outside their fence line or outside their operational boundaries and consider the watershed that they're in and the challenges that they create and that are created for them by other water users. And then how do you collectively solve and address shared water challenges? So water management and this watershed approach and looking at water stewardship is really an effective means for the private sector to be able to engage farmers, industry, other sectors, to have that cross-sectoral view, municipalities, governments, not-for-profit organizations, to be able to bring together a collaborative approach to start addressing water challenges, and to do so in a way that strengthens farms and farm resilience and strengthens agri-food value chains. So in order to effectively approach water stewardship in agriculture, you have to think that remember that agriculture functions in a biological system. So because it functions in a biological system, every farm and every acre across the world is unique and different. So there's no one approach that works. So a suite of practices, products, and solutions that are grounded in agronomic good science are the best approach to be able to provide resilience and on-farm water stewardship. So things like for our nutrient stewardship, where you're looking at the right types, the right sources of nutrients at the right rates, putting them at the right time and in the right place so that you can have maximum plant uptake, so that you're not losing your nutrients to waterways or in the soil. Other things like integrated pest management, technologies like slow released fertilizers or variable rate application, even things like practicing no-till cropping to reduce erosion, planting legumes in rotation as part of a diverse crop rotation, or planting cover crops, and even just on-farm water efficiency, whether it's irrigation or just farm water management. But at the end of the day, good agronomy is the basis for water stewardship on the farm. And these are all examples of products, practices, and solutions that can help enable on-farm water stewardship. So how does water stewardship help accelerate food and water security goals? Well, as a member of the private sector, I believe that we can help drive solutions through water stewardship, through connecting the value chain from farm to fork. And I know that sounds aspirational, but we can do that through playing a variety of roles. We can act as educators by educating both the value chain members and society on the challenges faced in sustainable agriculture and water stewardship. We can be a convener and a participant in multi-collaborative water projects and collective action. We can be a leader and enable these projects to happen in sourcing and distribution watersheds. And we can be a communicator, so telling the story of on-farm water stewardship and understanding what that looks like so that we can help increase uptake as that. The screen are two just examples of some collaborative water stewardship projects that we're working on in Western Canada. These cover about 20 different collaborative partners. They're in their infancy in terms of their stage, but what they're really starting to look at is understanding what is the value creation from a more formal approach to on-farm water stewardship. And we're using the Alliance for Water Stewardship International Water Stewardship Standard. And how does that apply at the farm level and then through the value chain? And then from that is how do we measure and report out on the environmental co-benefits of doing water stewardship in the value chain, so that it doesn't just create value for the farmer and resilience on the farm, but it also creates ESG or sustainability value for the value chain. So these are just two examples. It's being done on roughly 13,000 hectares. And again, it's to learn so that we can help in scaling up, because being able to learn how to do this and then how to measure and report out will help drive uptake through the value chain. Some of the preliminary learnings from this work is, first of all, there needs to be a clear value proposition for the farmer. They're just like everyone else, they're trying to run a business, and at the end of the day, farmers really do care about sustainability, but their view of sustainability is making sure that their land is profitable and ready for the next generation to take over. And we need to be able to combine other sustainability programs like carbon programs or carbon markets to be able to help with uptake of water stewardship. And also, farmers don't often feel engaged in water stewardship or sustainability efforts in the supply chain. So as we look to do more collaboration, which we've talked about a lot today, we need to make sure that we have more engagement with farmers. So I'm just going to show this example. This is an example of private sector kind of bringing together from pretty much from farm to fork. It is the Potato Sustainability Alliance, so they are focused on one commodity. It's starting in North America with the major potato processors, customers, retailers, and even the producers. But the example that I'm showing here is, the reason I like it is even though it's focused on one commodity, those same farmed acres also rotate in grains and oil seeds and other types of crops. So this is an approach where they're bringing together the entire value chain to be able to look at a material issue of water stewardship and how do you address that effectively together. So we're currently in the process of developing a program that will be approved by the board of directors and then implemented to be able to say how as a supply chain can we make water stewardship and food security meaningful, and how do we drive that across the value chain. So I'd like to close by just mentioning, just wrapping up by a couple key points. A more formalized approach of water stewardship can help accelerate food and water security goals. How? By engaging and supporting farmers and other agri-food value chain members. To do this, the private sector needs to play various roles in water stewardship, whether that's a convener, an enabler, a supporter, a communicator, or a leader. This approach can work for all farm sizes, not just big or large scale farms or medium-sized farms, but it can also work for small holders. And it can be in any country in the world, in any application, which is why we're using best practices like the Alliance for Water Stewardship standard. This approach is grounded in good agronomy, so it works for and with agriculture and the food chain, and it helps improve farm resilience, profitability, and sustainability. This approach also provides an opportunity to adapt to local climate challenges as they arise, because we all know that climate changes wherever we go, and so it provides that regional climate adaptation. And then this approach can also provide co-benefits, so environmental co-benefits to be able to achieve multiple sustainable development goals as we look to continue to address water and food security challenges. And that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mike. And really like the way that you sort of presented how value chain relationships are shifting from being very transactional to being very collaborative. I think we're seeing that more and more, and that's the way we need to go when we look at value chain partnerships. Okay, let's move on to our next speaker, and we're going to go back online again, and we're going to have Yatin Yadav, who is the manager of the USAID Secretariat Unit for the Water and Energy for Food initiative that we heard about earlier. So Yatin, hopefully you can hear us and you're ready to go. Yatin, can you speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Super, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'll share my slide. First of all, thank you, Tom, and very happy to be here. As you can see on the slide, I'll be speaking on scaling innovations of local SMEs. Innovators can make a difference, and through my presentation, I'll try to provide why and how. But before that, so my name is Yatin Yadav. I'm the USAID Secretariat Manager for the Water and Energy for Food Grand Challenge. And a bit of introduction of the program. Water Energy for Food, which we lovingly call V4F, is a joint international initiative of the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, the European Union, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Government of Netherlands, Sweden through Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, and United States Agency for International Development, USAID. It is a $65 million initiatives that focuses on innovations in three key areas. As you can see, water, food, innovations in energy, food, and combined innovation in water, energy, food. And when I say innovation, they are products, solutions, technologies, business models that help farmers produce more food by being more water and energy efficient. Also, V4F builds on the lessons learned from its previous predecessor's Grand Challenge program, namely securing water for food and powering agriculture, which dealt with water efficiency and energy efficiency separately. So this program is combined and becomes much larger to support more innovators in the region. The key of this program actually is our regional innovation hubs and our partner countries. So V4F is a locally implemented program through 5 regional innovation hubs that cover, as you can see on the screen, East Africa, Middle East and North Africa, MENA region, South and Southeast Asia, Southern and Central Africa, and West Africa. So each of our hub provides innovators with financial assistance, technical assistance, as well as investment facilitations. And when I say innovators in the presentation, they would mean small, medium enterprises, mid to late stage organizations that are taking the solutions from one of those 3 nexus to the farmers, especially the smallholder farmers, right? So this assistance that is provided by the hub, that support helps the innovators scale their businesses and impact smallholder farmers, helping them grow more food with less water and energy. So why does V4F work with innovators to scale their innovation? As you can see, because women and men smallholder farmers are at the base of our agri-food systems, and they are critical to feeding the coming billions in the years to come. However, as we all know, they still lack access to knowledge, agriculture inputs, finance, technology, markets, and sometimes in case of women, even rights for land and water. So by improving access to future-proof innovations, I think innovators can empower smallholder farmers and other end users related to the agriculture sector, especially women, youth, and base of the pyramid communities. So what exactly is that our innovators do that can make such a difference, and how do their solutions improve agri-food systems? So as you can see, small and medium-sized enterprises that develop local innovative solutions are better equipped to solve challenges faced by smallholder farmers. One, because they work in those communities, they are much closer to those communities, so they can integrate the feedback and voice of the farmers in the solutions or technologies they make. Because if they don't, most of the technology solution will not be adopted and they will not succeed as a company. And being an SME, that becomes key to them by necessity than by opportunity. Second, as you can see, smallholder farmers who have access to SMEs innovations, they can produce more food by using less water. Namely, you can see the hydroponics technology using solar pumps. These kind of innovations are making farmers more climate resilient, which is the urgent call to action. Additionally, SMEs and innovation who bring together diverse sector and elevate local knowledge can help those at the regional, national, and international level. Because SMEs work with the farmers directly, they know the challenges faced by the farmers, and then in turn by they themselves, they can actually help provide inputs to the legal, policy, and regulatory environment at local, national, and international level. So we are now familiar with how the local private sector innovators can make a difference, but what do they need to make that possible? And that's where V4F support comes in. So V4F primarily has 5 areas of intervention: innovator support in terms of financial and technical assistance, as I mentioned, investment facilitation, which is the second point listed, and one of the key points in this program, because SMEs are looking to mobilize private sector investment, and they are very rarely able to do alone because of complexities that are there in the process, as well as lack of knowledge and access. So our hubs have brokering units which work with these innovators in a customized way and help them mobilize funds to scale their businesses. Third, capacity development, because it's not just the innovators, but sometimes capacity development is needed for farmers, for other value chain actors to have an end-to-end impact that our innovations yearn for. Fourth, knowledge generation, because facilitation and exchange. With this program implemented worldwide, there are various best practices, lessons learned, pivots, failures, as well as successes that we have. And when we share these by newsletter, tools, blogs, I think it helps the other actors in the ecosystems. And same thing can be taken from other actors into this program. And finally, advocacy of water, energy, food issues for legal, policy, and regulatory environments on the national and global level. Going a bit deeper into the examples, why we support technical assistance, because one, it helps innovators improve their businesses and adjust to market, because innovators as SMEs are constantly facing barriers, some big, some small, and a bespoke customized technical assistance could be from investor readiness, business development, environmental sustainability, gender integration, marketing, sales, legal. So these are the different sort of technical assistance provided based on the need of each innovator rather than a templatized TA that is provided. So that's one unique, and it helps the innovators integrate women and base of the pyramid communities into their business model, because a specific impetus is laid on gender mainstreaming and smallholder farmers within this program. Why financial assistance? So by providing grants to innovators, V4F is able to reach larger, more diverse group of innovators, some of whom may not have otherwise received funding due to being especially women innovators and or youth innovators. For instance, you can see we have through 5 hubs, 139 innovators, and 23 of those are women-led and or are women-owned. The type of innovators are diverse, ranging from hydroponics in Sudan and Kenya to a biodegradable seed tip in South Africa, and solar powered irrigation systems in almost all of our hubs, but working in different regional context. So these business now have in V4F, these business now have someone who believes in their potential by using the milestone-based grants. They also are willing to scale and have reached around 520,000 end users. As you can see in that, we support with investment readiness. In the last year, V4F innovators have mobilized 8.5 million USDs. And there are 2 events that happened. One, West Africa hub hosted speed dating, whereas the MENA hub invited 20 plus innovators to one innovators capital raising event. So different approaches according to the region. So looking to scale, what are the impacts that V4F has achieved? So till now, it has through our innovators, the end users have produced 1.2 million tons of food. They have saved 57 million tons of CO2, saved 24 million kilowatt of energy, and reduced water consumption by 291 million liters of water, and which has resulted in 72,000 hectares of land under improved management practices. Couple of final slides before I end. What is important is capacity development for innovators and other institutions who work with them, as well as grants, subsidies, and end user financing support. This has been a learning, and this is the support that I think the ecosystem needs to provide to help focus on farmers' access to innovation and then make the value chain more resilient. And finally, in addition to the grants, subsidies, and end user financing initiatives, the government must also look at the legal, policy, and regulatory environment to ensure that they are not hindering the adoption of these nexus technologies. This is possible by calling SMEs and innovators into the discussion table and listening to their experience from a bottom-up perspective. And for others who are interested in scaling SMEs and innovation, they must form strong working relationship and partnership with different stakeholders of the entire value chain. And then and only then, I think with the knowledge, lessons learned, the agriculture sector can be made more climate resilient, as well as more socially empowering and integrating of women and youth. And finally, the best opportunity for these learnings lay within the peer-to-peer learning, where innovators from different regions can come and interact with each other. From our experience of hosting boot camps and East Africa meets West Africa exchanges, innovators share their vulnerability, share their success, and take back that experience of and motivation of working towards smallholder farmers' welfare. So with that, I'll end my presentation, and we will be happy to take questions at a later stage. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Yatin, thanks so much for that insightful presentation. I think a nice compliment to what we had heard earlier from Mike, though, focusing on the SMEs. And one of the vulnerabilities of the pandemic, as you look at supply chains, was really the resilience of SMEs, whether it's the financial aspects, the technical aspects, etc. So really focusing on developing the capacities of SMEs is going to be critical for that supply chain resiliency. Last presentation before we have some interaction with the speakers. Again, online, I'd like to welcome Rabindra Karki from the International Development Enterprises in Nepal. Rabindra, hopefully you can hear us and you're ready to go. Please speak.
Okay, hi everyone. Namaste from Nepal, and good morning, good afternoon. It's me, Ravindra, representing ITE. I'm very much delighted to present our research on viability and economic sustainability of solar power irrigation system in Nepal's Tarai. In this presentation includes introduction, objectives, research and methodology, result and discussion, conclusion, and recommendation. So while talking about the water pumping for irrigation sector in Nepal, it is still dominated by diesel water pumps, followed by electric water pumps. According to the World Bank reports, Nepal has good solar energy potential with an average of more than 300 sunny days per year and average solar radiations of 4.4 to 5.5 kilowatt hour per meter square per day. Besides, many benefits of the solar pumping projects are typically subsidy-driven or funded by grant and a few donor-funded projects. And very little study has been carried out to assess the socioeconomic viability, switching from the diesel and electric pumps to the solar pumps for irrigation purpose, and the sustainability of the technology in long run. The objective of this study was to evaluate cost effectiveness of solar pumping technology over conventional type of the pumping systems. Within these main objectives, we had two specific objectives, which are compare solar to diesel electric pumps for a small scale irrigation system for marginal farmers at selected districts in Saptari, and compare performance of the community-based solar pumping systems in Saptari. So our research sites are solar, diesel, and electric pumping sites of the Saptari districts. You can see the highlighted part are the municipalities of the Saptari districts. So we use a mixed method, both qualitative and quantitative. For qualitative, KII done, and for quantitative, field observation and semi-structure interview were conducted in different 14 solar pumping sites and the diesel pumping sites. And for the selection, we set some criteria like system size and year of installations, funding models, application of the water, and ownership. So for the data collections, we use key informant interview and technical field observation at solar pump, electric, and diesel pumping sites. And we also interviewed owner, operator, installer, repair and maintenance service providers, and promoters. For this study, we use life cycle cost approach to compare the different pumping systems offering the same outputs or services. So unit water cost was calculated for different pumping technologies, considering life cycle cost for over 20 years period, taking into account all the cash flows like initial upfront cost, operating cost, repair and maintenance cost, and replacements cost. result and discussion. From the study, we found that 1200 watt systems with 1.5 HP submersible AC pumps are most commonly used. And the groundwater was the main water source for all the solar pumping units. Out of 14 solar pumping units we visited, 10 are being used for the irrigation purpose, where 2 units are being used for the fish farming and 2 are for supply water for institutions like madrasa and temples for drinking and sanitation purpose. And we found highest capacity utilization factors was found in fish farming, which is 58%, followed by 50% for domestic purposes that used by the madrasa and temple. And very low utilization factors were found for irrigation purpose, which is 37%. And around 50% farmers were producing traditional crops using the solar power pumps. So here, cost per unit water for the solar pump reflects the cost of water, which provides a measure for the cost at which water at a particular installation need to be sold at in order to recover all the inclusive cost for providing the water supply services. To compare the cost effectiveness of the solar pumping technologies, most commonly used solar pumping system was considered for the analysis. The cost for unit water for the solar pumping were calculated considering life cycle cost at different capacity utilization factor. In the graph, you can see that if the solar pump is operated utilizing 10% of its capacity, the pump for the per unit water cost is 19 cents. And the cost is reduced to 2.2 cents if it is operated at 90% of capacity utilization factor. The reason behind that is that high upfront cost of the solar pump and minimal operation and maintenance cost. Similarly, we calculated cost for the cost per unit water for the different others, diesel and electric pumps, considering the prevailing unit cost for calculations, input cost for the calculations. So you can see that in the graph that when the solar pump is operated at more than 40% of its capacity utilization factor, the solar pumps become cost-effective option compared to diesel pumps. This could be even lower with the increase in diesel prices globally. And if the solar pump is operated at more than 90% capacity utilization factor, the solar pump becomes cost-effective solution than electric pumps, and which also could be lower with decreasing solar technology prices. So for the payback period of solar pumping at different unit of waters, we calculate using the different unit rates, like 4.3 cents was considered with a minimum, which is a minimum price of water for diesel pumps when it operated equivalent to 50% of solar pumps. And second, we took 6.2 cents, which is prevailing rates of water from diesel pump sets, and 7.9 cents, which is communities' willingness to pay for their water if they get water on demands. So currently, farmers are paying 6.2 cents per unit water to the diesel pump owner. If we consider this price as a tariff rate per unit water, the payback period of the solar pump is 4.18 years if the solar pump is operated at 70% of its capacity utilization factor. And people's impression on the solar pumping technology is mainly divided into issues and perceived benefits. In issue sectors, the high capital costs, lack of spare parts and maintenance centers at the local market, poor supplies in network, long response time from the service provider, limited working hours, less discharge, and unable to supply variation in water demand, chances of PV module damage or theft, not available off-the-shelf model in different range of the capacity in the local market, and so on. And similarly, perceived benefits were no fuel costs required, automatic in operation of the systems, no pollutions, no need to transport pumps daily to and from, field which makes life of women and children very easy. In conclusion, so we found that low utilization factor of the solar pumps are found to be one of the challenges And solar pump can be cost-effective technologies than diesel pump set and the grid-operated pumps if they are operated more than 700 hours and around 1,500 hours per annum, respectively. And diesel pump set and grid-operated pumps are still the first choice of the farmers, along with solar, people are using the electric mostly, followed by the diesel as a backup. And when appropriately matched to the usage requirement, solar pump can be cost-effective alternative to traditional pumps in the past historically. And adoption may be increased by improving supply chain networks and access to repair and maintenance services, introducing high-value cash crop, promoting water-efficient micro-irrigation technologies, increasing access to finance and new technologies, subsidizing solar technologies or operating solar pumps at high capacity utilization factor, connecting to the grid to sell or buy surplus or deficit energy. And finally, as the extent of the pump adoption expand, the government should formulate and implement the policies to prevent overexploitation of groundwater resources. With this, I would like to acknowledge Australian government and also the ACIF and also the DSI for MTF project and the team, and also the IDE country director for Iwahara and Liz for their guidance and support. Thank you so much.
Rabindra, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I feel we've really started off at quite a macro level at the beginning of the session. You've really brought us down on the ground with some really tangible results from your work. So really impressive to see that. Thank you so much. Look, we started the session a bit late. We're going to use the liberty to extend a little bit and have some time for questions and answers, maybe 2 or 3 quick fire ones. And to facilitate this, I'd like to welcome Johannes up, who will take some questions and ask our speakers, please, in the room to step up, and those online just to stay on the screen. So Johannes, maybe you can take 2 or 3 quick fire questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you, Tom. So is there someone from the audience and presence who wants to ask a question to Ms. Forwork or to the other speakers? So please raise your hand, I will come to you. Please, maybe you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ana Deveza from UN Human Rights. Thank you so much for your presentations. They were really inspirational. My question is from a policymaker perspective, what, in your opinion, should be changed in legal and policy frameworks to easily implement the water energy food nexus? Thank you.
To whom? Anyone. Anyone. Who feels responsible to answer this question? No?
I try to stay out of policy, but I think policy and governments need to be willing to recognize action that's being done and willing to incentivize change that needs to happen and being willing to be a partner at the table. And so I think sometimes policy is developed in silos. And so there needs to be maybe a change in how policy is developed so that it is cross-sectoral, so it is more of a collaborative nature, so that the full understanding and breadth of the challenges and problems are actually addressed, as opposed to just blanket policies or blanket statements that don't really enact any impact or change. Thoughts on that, Tanya?
I would like to add something else based on our experience in my country. We have good policies, we have good measure, but we don't have good resources. So I think policy is not just a political willing, but we also need to have all those policies, measure, plus resources. Thank you.
Thank you for these answers. Is there one? There's one room for one more question. So I go back in the room there.
Thank you so much for the panelists. My name is Imran Sajid. I recently completed PhD in ZIF. Dr. Tanya mentioned it. It's Center for Development Research under Bonn University. So my question is to Dr. Tanya. Yeah, while considering water, I think it's only one component in agricultural system, because for food security we have to consider the whole value chain and also other parameters that can also boost water productivity in agriculture system, like we have improved seed, fertilizer, diseases control. So all these parameters are interconnected and interlinked, and then it can better all in a connective way can bring food security. And while working with small scale farmers in developing country, so it's really hard sometimes, because I have worked with small scale farmers in Punjab, Pakistan, that even through different projects that donors they are funding, after 1 year, these small scale farmers, they change their behavior. So they adapt to different variable environmental changes, like if the market changes or the fertilizer accessibility, affordability, or availability change, so they change their system, or even on-farm water management. So since BMZ is funding a lot of projects in agricultural system, I was curious to know your point of view. How do you consider the sustainability, or how do you measure the impact of your funding when these projects change? Because maybe the small scale farmers change their behavior when the local context change. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I have my experts with me.
Okay. Allow me to introduce myself. Marike is my name is this on? Okay, all right, okay. Okay, so my name is Rike Sohn. I'm a senior policy advisor for water, and I think if I understood your first question correctly, why consider water not just as one input, but to give it more attention, I think it's this water stewardship approach, right? So that you look at the entire ecosystem, that you look at what effect it has on the soil, on your product, on. So yes, it's one input, but it's one input that is connected with the whole ecosystem around the farm. So these, what you mentioned, this integrated approaches, that should be taken into consideration, because it's one input that influences on all the other ones. And vice versa, right? And why we're working with small scale farming, I think that's a really good question. You're really right that it's a difficult task, but I think there's also this idea of the United Nations to leave no one behind, and we have a lot of global injustice going on. So it's important to empower those people on the ground. And I know if you look at indicators, it's hard to make this in a really efficient way. But that's why we have approaches like those innovators, like small and medium-sized enterprises that are close to the ground, that can help push these people. And if you look at it from like a job perspective, and what Ms. Forwerk said in the beginning also, that like agriculture really can help lift people out of poverty. So then you cannot overlook these millions and billions working in the sector, even if they're harder to reach.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you, speakers. Look, we have to close before we get evicted, which can be a bit of an affair. Listen, thank you so much for our speakers today. Some really interesting, insightful presentations. We've covered a lot of ground from the macro to the micro. This is session 2 of the seminar. Session 3 is after the break. It's downstairs on level 1, room Pilar, if that